The distress signal reached Earth in the dead of night, a chilling pulse across the vastness of space. It echoed across the stars, a desperate plea from the remnants of galactic civilizations on the brink of total annihilation. The message came in multiple languages, but the words were the same. Help us. The Orcs are coming. Commander Sarah Grayson stood in the command center of Earth's main fleet, watching the transmission flicker on the screen. The words sounded like something out of an old war movie, but the reality was far darker than anything in human history. The Orcs were no myth, no folklore. They were real, and their very name was enough to send the bravest soldiers into cold sweats. The human race had survived its own bloody history, from the brutal wars of the past to the environmental collapse that had nearly wiped them out. And now, a new battle awaited. But this time, humanity was facing something that would challenge everything they knew about survival. Grayson turned to her team, who were gathered in tense silence. She could feel their fear, but it was the kind of fear that sharpened resolve. Humans didn't run from danger. They adapted, fought back, and found a way to win. "We've been called to fight," she said, her voice steady, almost too calm. "And they're expecting us to do it their way." She paused, letting the weight of the words hang in the room. Well, they're going to be disappointed. The humans had no intention of playing by the galaxy's rules. They had always been different, unpredictable, and dangerous in their own right. What they lacked in advanced alien technology, they made up for in sheer ingenuity. They had no place in the carefully maintained order of galactic politics, but they knew how to fight wars. "Prepare the fleet," Grayson commanded, "and send out the message to the colonies. We're not just saving ourselves. We're going to show the Orcs exactly why they made a mistake in underestimating us." The message spread quickly across Earth and beyond. Humanity's call to arms went viral, and soon fleets began assembling, a hodgepodge of ships cobbled together from old tech, civilian vessels, and military surplus. But there was something in the air that had not been there before. A sense of urgency, a wild hope that burned brighter than ever before. On the moon, Earth's defense platforms began to hum with life. Massive guns and energy shields coming online for the first time in decades. The sheer audacity of what humanity was about to do would send a shockwave across the galaxy. No one had ever faced the Orcs and lived to tell the tale. But then again, no one had ever faced humanity either. "We'll fight our way to the heart of the Orcs Empire if we have to," Grayson said, locking eyes with each of her officers. "And we'll make sure they never forget what happened when they decided to mess with humanity." The countdown began. The human fleet, rough and unpolished but brimming with raw determination, prepared to meet the galaxy's greatest threat head-on. The human fleet, assembled in a haphazard but determined rush, slipped into the void between the stars. Commander Grayson stood on the bridge of the Hercules, Earth's flagship, watching the planets of the Sol system recede into the distance. The fleet was a chaotic mix of aging warships, civilian transports, and hastily retrofitted cargo vessels, but each ship carried something more dangerous than just weapons: a human will to survive, a drive to fight that no one had anticipated. The Orcs, ancient and incomprehensible, were on their way. They had never encountered an enemy like this before, and they had no idea what they were about to face. Grayson stared out at the deep, empty expanse of space, feeling the weight of the moment settle into her bones. This was no longer just a fight for survival. This was about proving humanity's place in the galaxy. The Council may have called them terrifying, but they would learn soon enough that the humans were also unpredictable, and it was that very unpredictability that would give them the edge. "All ships, prepare for engagement," Grayson said, her voice cutting through the tension. "We may not have the tech or the numbers, but we have something the Orcs don't: chaos." The fleet dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of Orcs territory, the vast, black void stretching out before them. The first wave of enemy ships appeared almost immediately, their long, jagged forms cutting through the darkness like sharks in the deep. The Orcs ships were monstrous, their weapons bristling with alien technology that could erase entire fleets in seconds. It was a sobering sight. But the humans were not intimidated. Instead, they did what they did best. They adapted. "Engage in close-quarters combat," Grayson ordered. "Full spread of kinetic missiles, and don't give them a second to think." The human ships darted forward with unpredictable movements, the crew pushing their vessels to the limit. No elegant formation. No calculated positioning. Just pure, gut-wrenching violence. The Orcsari expected a traditional battle, a game of strategy, where they could manipulate the outcome with their superior technology. What they got instead were human fighters weaving erratically through firestorms, launching missiles that ricocheted off asteroid fields, and using every scrap of debris as cover. The Hercules engaged the lead Orcsari warship, its cannons hammering out fire with precise brutality. Grayson's command style was a gamble, but she knew the only way to beat a foe that operated by rules was to break those rules entirely. Her tactics were anything but conventional. The humans didn't fight like the galaxy's other species. They fought with a desperation and ferocity no one had expected. The first wave of Orcsari ships began to buckle. Their fleets, designed for precision and overwhelming force, couldn't keep up with the raw, unrelenting chaos the humans unleashed. Missiles hit. Shields flared. And then, a scream of victory rang out across the human communications network. "We're actually doing it," Lieutenant Miller said, his voice filled with disbelief. "They're retreating." The Orcsari, stunned by the sudden, unpredictable assault, began to withdraw, but not without leaving their own mark. The human fleet had suffered losses. Several ships were crippled in the chaos, but the damage to the Orcsari forces was worse. "First blood is ours," Grayson said, watching the retreating Orcsari ships disappear into the void. "But don't get comfortable. This war is just beginning." The humans had struck their first blow, and the galaxy would never be the same. The victory was temporary. The Orcsari had retreated, but they would not stay down. And in the quiet aftermath of the battle, a chilling realization began to settle over Grayson and her crew. Humanity had won the first round. But the cost of that victory was still unclear, and the true nature of their enemy was only beginning to reveal itself. The human fleet gathered at a remote outpost on the fringes of Orcsari space to regroup and lick their wounds. The victory, however, had a bitter aftertaste. Despite their wild tactics, they hadn't destroyed the Orcsari. They had merely stalled them. "Look at this," Grayson said, pointing to a holographic map of the battlefield. It was clear that the Orcsari ships hadn't been fully routed. They had retreated with tactical precision, vanishing into the dark corners of the galaxy as if they had never been there. It was as though the Orcsari had expected humanity's response, planned for it even. "Something's wrong," Lieutenant Miller said, his voice tense. "They didn't even fight like they were trying to win. It was more like they were testing us." Grayson turned, a frown creasing her brow. "Testing us for what?" That was when the first real shock hit. A message arrived from an encrypted Orcsari transmission, intercepted by one of the human ships on the outer edges of their fleet. The content was brief, yet horrifying. "The humans are the greatest threat. Eliminate them before they become a problem." It wasn't just a message, it was a directive. The Orcsari knew about humanity's potential, and they were afraid. Afraid, Grayson muttered to herself. Why would they fear us? As the days passed, humanity's experts worked frantically to decrypt Orcsari transmissions, trying to understand what made them so terrified. But the answer wasn't simple. The Orcsari had been systematically wiping out entire civilizations, leaving no trace of their existence. They were not just conquerors, they were erasers of history, of life itself. And their methods were far more terrifying than anything humanity had encountered. Soon, Grayson's worst fears were confirmed. The Orcsari didn't just destroy their enemies. They had developed a terrifying weapon, a type of energy field that could erase entire worlds from existence. The weapon was not just destructive. It had the ability to delete entire timelines, erasing the history of civilizations as if they had never existed. Their first strike on us wasn't just an invasion. Grayson said, slamming her fist on the table. It was a warning. But there was something even more insidious buried within the Orcs' technology. In analyzing their weapon systems, humanity discovered that the Orcs could alter memory itself, wiping away traces of their existence from the minds of everyone who had ever known them. That's how they conquer, Grayson said quietly, her voice trembling with realization. They don't just kill. They forget. The implications were terrifying. If the Orcs could erase memory, humanity itself could become a forgotten species, a footnote in the annals of galactic history. Grayson knew then that they weren't just fighting for survival. They were fighting for their very identity. If the Orcs succeeded, humanity would vanish without a trace. And that, Grayson realized, was something the humans could never allow. We won't let them erase us, she said, eyes blazing with fierce resolve. We fight to be remembered, to leave our mark. And we'll do whatever it takes to make sure the Orcs know what happens when you try to erase humanity. Her team, battered but resolute, nodded in agreement. The war had just escalated to an entirely new level. The battle for survival was no longer about winning. It was about existence itself. The horror of the Orcs' weapon, the ability to erase entire worlds and histories, fueled humanity's resolve. Commander Grayson could see the fear in her crew's eyes, but there was something else there too. A burning need to adapt, to find a way to survive. Humans were resilient, and when faced with the impossible, they always found a way to fight back. This war wasn't about playing by the rules of galactic warfare. It was about creating new rules. Grayson had the fleet assemble in the cavernous war room aboard the Hercules. The strategy was simple. If the Orcs could erase history, humanity would make sure that history would never be theirs to erase. They needed to stop fighting like the other galactic races and start fighting like humans. We need to adapt faster than they can destroy us, Grayson said, pacing in front of the map of the galaxy that hovered before her. Their technology is powerful, but it's based on their rules. We're going to break those rules. The humans' first step was the creation of a new kind of warfare, one that mixed high-tech human ingenuity with pure, chaotic unpredictability. If the Orcs were going to manipulate the very fabric of time and history, humanity would do what they did best: harness chaos as a weapon. We're going to fight in their minds, Grayson said, her voice cutting through the room. The Orcs depend on their mental control. We're going to hack it. For the first time since the conflict began, humanity's most brilliant minds worked together to develop a technology that could disrupt the Orcs' Erasure weapon, a neural jamming device capable of scrambling their energy fields and preventing them from erasing entire worlds. The catch: it was a one-time-use prototype, and no one knew how long it would take to develop a second one. We're betting everything on this, Lieutenant Miller said as he examined the blueprint of the device. If this works, we disrupt their entire plan. If it doesn't, we're done. But Grayson had no doubts. She'd seen how humans responded in the face of disaster. They thrived on it. With the jamming device in place, they launched a daring strike against the Orcs' fleet. The attack was unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. Humanity's fleet didn't just engage in traditional combat. They launched an audacious assault, diving straight into the heart of Orcs-controlled space, targeting the enemy's flagship. Ships peeled off from the formation at random, throwing off Orcs' attempts to coordinate a response. Instead of predictable maneuvers, humanity's ships cut sharp, unexpected paths, crashing into the enemy lines, forcing the Orcs to react rather than plan. The human fighters and bombers struck with ruthless precision, but it was the mental warfare that truly tipped the scales. Every human soldier aboard the ships wore devices designed to project chaotic thought patterns that scrambled the Orcs' own neural manipulation. As the Orcs tried to make sense of the attacks, their command structures fractured. The humans used this confusion as their advantage. On the Hercules, Grayson's eyes remained fixed on the live feed. The first jamming device activated, sending a pulse that reverberated through the enemy's fleet like an explosion of psychic energy. Orcs' ships froze, their weapon systems misfiring, their shields faltering. For the first time, humanity had them on the ropes. But the Orcs weren't finished yet. The humans knew this. They'd only bought themselves time. As Grayson watched the chaos unfold, she knew that this battle was only a small victory. "Hold steady," she ordered. "This isn't over yet. We've just given them something to fear." The pulse of victory rippled through humanity's fleet. For once, the Orcs weren't the ones who had control. For once, the galaxy's greatest terror had been forced into a corner. And humanity. Humanity had just proven what they were capable of when pushed to the edge. The jamming device had worked, but at a heavy cost. The Orcs fleet was reeling, temporarily crippled by the chaotic mental disruption, but humanity's victory was fleeting. Their counterattack had only delayed the inevitable. The Orcs, with their advanced technology and relentless will to erase, were regrouping, adapting, and preparing for humanity's next move. Grayson knew they couldn't afford to wait around for the enemy to recover. If they were to win, they had to strike now, before the Orcs could consolidate their power. But how? Humanity's most advanced weapons had barely made a dent. The Orcs' mind-erasing devices still loomed, and their fleets, though shaken, were rebuilding rapidly. In the face of such overwhelming odds, Grayson began to wonder if they could even win at all, or if they would be wiped from existence like so many others before them. That's when the message came. It wasn't from the Orcs. It was from a hidden faction. Humans who had been living outside the reach of the Orcs war. A rebellion had formed. A covert army of survivors from Earth's distant colonies, scattered across the galaxy. They had heard of humanity's desperate battle and had been waiting for a sign to join the fight. "We've been waiting for the call," the message began, encrypted and faint. "We are the Forgotten Legion, and we're coming to your aid." The Forgotten Legion, a name both humbling and inspiring, was the key to turning the tide. These colonies, decimated by past wars and hiding in the farthest reaches of the galaxy, had long resisted Orcs control. They were survivors, hardened by isolation and terror, and they carried with them a deep knowledge of the Orcs' operations. Humanity had never been truly united under one banner, but now, with the legions of forgotten soldiers returning, it was time to change that. Grayson's crew stared in awe as the fleet's radar blinked, signaling new ships entering the sector. More ships, more fighters. The Forgotten Legion had arrived, and with them came the fire of 1,000 lost worlds, each one determined to exact vengeance on the Orcs for what they had done. "We'll never be forgotten," Grayson muttered, her voice grim. "Not now." The Forgotten Legion's fleet, rugged and patched together from years of scavenging, arrived just in time. Their ships were old, their technology inferior, but they brought with them something far more valuable. Knowledge of the Orcs' inner workings and a strategy that could catch them off guard. Among the Legion's ranks were former Orcs prisoners who had defected long ago, and they brought crucial intelligence. They revealed a shocking secret. Hidden deep within the heart of Orcs-controlled space was a facility capable of producing an even more terrifying version of their memory-erasing weapon. A device that could erase not just entire species, but entire timelines. If activated, it could undo everything, obliterating not just humanity, but any trace of their existence, from the past to the future. Grayson knew that if they didn't destroy this facility, it would be the end, not just for humanity, but for all life that ever existed. The Orcs' genocidal ambitions were reaching a terrifying new level. "This is it," she said, eyes blazing with determination. "We go in. We end this now." With the Forgotten Legion's help, humanity would strike at the heart of the Orcs Empire. It would be a mission of no return, but Grayson was willing to sacrifice everything to ensure humanity's future, and their very place in history, was secured. The battle for existence had just become even more personal. The mission to destroy the Orcs' timeline-erasing facility was humanity's last, desperate hope. Commander Grayson and her fleet, bolstered by the Forgotten Legion's forces, made preparations for the most dangerous assault in human history. Their target was buried deep within the Arcsury's core territories, in a heavily fortified system known as the Epsilon Convergence, a blackened patch of space where no one had ever dared to venture. If humanity's forces had any hope of success, they would need to strike with absolute precision. The Forgotten Legion provided the key, a map to the heart of the Arcsury's empire. A series of forgotten routes, old smuggler lanes, and hidden wormholes that could allow humanity to bypass the heavily patrolled space and infiltrate the facility before the Arcsury realized what was happening. "This is it," Grayson said as she stood before her officers, the map of the Epsilon Convergence projected on the war room's walls. "We have one shot at this. If we fail, the Arcsury will rewrite history, and will never even be remembered as a species. No one will know we existed." Her words hung heavy in the air. The reality of the mission was sinking in. The crew, all veterans of countless battles, now faced a final, apocalyptic struggle, not just for survival, but for their very legacy. The journey to the Epsilon Convergence was treacherous. The fleet passed through forgotten asteroid belts, cracked moons, and ancient battlefields, remnants of wars fought long before humanity had even discovered space. As they neared the Arcsury heartland, the silence of space became oppressive, the threat of detection growing with every passing moment. "We're in position," Lieutenant Miller reported. "We've got only a few hours before the Arcsury begin their regular patrol. We have to make this fast." Grayson nodded. Every second counted. The Forgotten Legion had provided invaluable information about the layout of the Arcsury facility. It was located on a moon that orbited a dying star, surrounded by a field of gravitational anomalies that distorted time and space. Getting in undetected would be their greatest challenge. "This is where we separate the good from the great," Grayson said, her tone unwavering. "We're not just fighting to survive. We're fighting to be remembered." The first wave of humanity's ships, including the Hercules, descended into the dark moon's atmosphere. The task was clear: infiltrate the facility, disable its power grid, and plant the explosives to destroy the time-erasing device at its core. The Arcsury had never anticipated a direct assault from humanity. To them, humans were wild cards, unpredictable, chaotic, but not a real threat. They were wrong. The plan was simple: slip past the Arcsury defenses, disable the facility's outer shields, and create a diversion. With the human fleet ready to provide cover, Grayson's team would infiltrate the heart of the facility, neutralize any Arcsury forces, and destroy the timeline weapon before it could be activated. As the fleet entered the gravitational field of the moon, Grayson's heart raced. She knew that if they were caught now, there would be no escape. The Arcsury would obliterate them in an instant, but the human resolve was unshakable. They had come this far, and they were not going to let their legacy be erased. "Prepare for landing," Grayson commanded. "This is for Earth, for every world the Arcsury have destroyed, for the future of our people." The countdown began. The landing party was ready. Time was running out. They would either succeed and secure humanity's future, or be forgotten forever. The moon's surface loomed large as Grayson's landing party descended through the dense clouds of ash and ionized particles. The gravity was heavier than they expected, dragging their ships down faster than anticipated. The ground beneath them was jagged, a wasteland of black rock and craters, remnants of the Arcsury's unyielding presence. The landing zones were already marked by the Forgotten Legion scouts, but there was no telling how much time they had before the Arcsury realized they had been infiltrated. Grayson's pulse quickened as the Hercules landed, its landing gear scraping against the rough surface. The whole fleet had descended into the moon's atmosphere under the cover of a false magnetic storm, but now that they were on the surface, every move had to be executed with deadly precision. "Teams 1 and 2, get to your positions," Grayson ordered, voice steady despite the adrenaline coursing through her veins. "Move fast, move quiet. We can't afford to be discovered." The team split into 2 squads, each equipped with the latest stealth technology humanity had managed to scrounge together. Holographic cloaks shimmered around their bodies, rendering them nearly invisible against the bleak landscape. But the real challenge was infiltrating the heavily guarded facility buried deep beneath the moon's surface. "Grayson, we've got incoming," Lieutenant Miller reported over the comms. "Archery patrols are active. They've detected an anomaly. It's only a matter of time before they figure out we're here." "We'll make it work," Grayson replied, her voice a low growl. "Keep moving. We're close." The teams crept through the craggy landscape, avoiding the massive searchlights sweeping the area above them. The facility's entrance was hidden beneath layers of reinforced rock, but the Forgotten Legion had given them a way in. A forgotten maintenance shaft, hidden beneath a cavernous ridge, that led straight into the heart of the Arcsuri stronghold. "We're in position," Grayson reported once the shaft was secured. "Start planting the charges. We don't have much time." The facility loomed ahead, its dark silhouette now clearly visible as they descended into the vast underground complex. Inside, the corridors were eerily quiet, the faint hum of machinery the only sound in the still air. The Arcsuri had built this place to be a fortress, but humanity was here to tear it apart. As the explosives were set, Grayson felt the weight of the mission settle upon her. The stakes had never been higher. If they succeeded, they would deal a crippling blow to the Arcsuri's ability to erase history. If they failed, the galaxy would never know humanity existed. There would be no record of Earth, no trace of the human race, no legacy to leave behind. "We're almost there." Miller's voice crackled over the comms. "The core's just ahead. We've got one shot at this." Suddenly, a metallic clang echoed through the hallway. Grayson froze, eyes narrowing. The Arcsuri were here. The enemy had arrived, and the countdown had begun. "Move," Grayson barked. "Plant the charges and get to the extraction point. Now." But even as they sprinted to complete their mission, the ground trembled beneath their feet, and the lights flickered ominously. The Arcsuri were closing in. Time was running out. "We'll make it," Grayson muttered to herself. "We have to." The final countdown had begun, and the fate of humanity rested in their hands. The air in the Arcsuri facility grew thick with tension as Grayson's team raced down the winding corridors toward the facility's core. The hum of the machinery reverberated through the walls, and every step felt like a countdown in itself. Behind them, the Arcsuri were closing in, their footsteps loud in the silence. Grayson could feel the weight of the mission pressing down on her chest, but there was no room for hesitation. They had no time to waste. "Charges planted." Miller's voice came through the comms. "We're set. Now we get out of here." But Grayson wasn't listening. Her focus was on the chamber ahead, the enormous steel door that shielded the Arcsuri's most dangerous weapon. The room inside was where everything, every world, every timeline, could be rewritten, wiped from existence. The time-erasing device was nestled within the heart of the facility, and they had to destroy it before it was too late. "Keep moving," Grayson urged, her voice sharp. "We've got 5 minutes before the blast radius hits. If we don't leave now, it'll be a suicide run." Suddenly, the lights flickered, and the sound of approaching Arcsuri soldiers intensified. They were here. They had caught up. A deep, unnatural chill ran down Grayson's spine as the door ahead began to open, revealing the heart of the facility. A vast, chamber-sized machine of shimmering, dark energy, surrounded by armed Arcsuri guards. In an instant, the air was filled with blinding light and the thundering noise of weapons discharging. Grayson and her team dove for cover behind pillars of reinforced metal, the sound of laser fire echoing through the chamber. The Arcsuri weren't going to let them walk out alive. "They're locking down the exits," Lieutenant Miller shouted over the chaos, his voice strained. "We're trapped." Grayson's eyes darted to the energy device in the center of the room, now glowing with a terrifying power. It was active. The countdown to erase everything was ticking away. There was no more room for subtlety. It was time for humanity's last stand. "Cover me," Grayson yelled, and without waiting for a response, she sprinted toward the machine, dodging blasts and incoming fire. The moment she reached the central core, she pulled out the detonator. The countdown to the bomb's activation was already underway, but it wouldn't be enough unless they could destroy the device at the heart of the facility. The Orcs soldiers were closing in. Time was slipping away. With a surge of adrenaline, Grayson reached the device's main terminal and hacked into the system, her fingers flying over the controls. Sweat poured down her face as the Orcs soldiers advanced, but she couldn't stop now. Every second counted. "We've got to move. Now," Miller screamed from the other side of the room, his voice filled with urgency. Grayson knew the facility's core was about to self-destruct, but she needed one more second. Just one more second. With a final flourish of her hand, she activated the bomb's fail-safe, sending a surge of electricity into the heart of the device. A crackling, roaring sound filled the chamber as the machine sparked and shuddered. The timeline-erasing weapon began to power down, just in time. The blast from the detonator came next. The entire facility shook as a blinding explosion tore through the walls. The energy weapon disintegrated in a flash, and the ground beneath their feet began to crumble. "Fall back," Grayson yelled. "Everyone, now." With the facility collapsing around them, the team fought their way back toward the exit, their hearts pounding. The shockwave of the explosion sent them tumbling, but Grayson refused to stop. The future of humanity depended on this. As they emerged from the crumbling facility, the final blast rocked the moon, sending it into a spiral of destruction. Grayson and her team barely made it to their extraction points in time. They watched from the safety of their ships as the facility imploded into itself, the dark energy dissipating into the void of space. "We did it," Miller said, his voice almost in disbelief. "We stopped them." Grayson nodded, her heart still racing. "We didn't just stop them. We sent a message." Humanity had faced the brink of annihilation, but against all odds, they had fought back. Not just for survival, but for something far greater. Their place in the universe, their legacy, and the story of humanity would never be erased. As the human fleet retreated, with the remnants of the Orcs Empire flickering in the distance, Grayson gazed out at the stars, knowing that the galaxy would remember this fight. Humanity had won, and they had made sure everyone knew it.